G'day guys, and welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of Becoming Self-Sufficient. Now you might notice the background behind me is a little bit different to what's usually there, and that's because I'm taking a new step in becoming even more self-sufficient. And I thought to myself, what's one of those things that we use all the time in our backyard veggie patches that we can actually make ourselves? And that is seaweed fertilizer. So on today's episode, guys, I'll be teaching you how to make your own seaweed fertilizer. Now guys, before we get started on simply collecting the seaweed, it's important that you understand what's going on in your local area. A lot of councils don't actually allow you to remove any seaweed or aquatic plants from the ocean, so we won't be doing that today. And sometimes you even need a fisher's license to be able to even collect seaweed. So make sure you check out your local laws and restrictions before you just head down to your beach and start collecting seaweed. So what we'll be collecting today is a variety of different seaweeds to make our concoction. We'll be getting kelp, we'll be getting redweed, we'll be getting brownweed, and most of what we'll be getting will simply be collecting what's washed up on the rocks at high tide. It's all about sustainability, and the last thing we want to do is cause any damage to our local ecosystem. Now it's also important to remember, guys, when you're collecting seaweed off the rocks, check for any life. This is absolutely covered in snails, and the last thing you want to do is be taking them away from their home and destroying their habitat. Okay, so we've definitely got enough seaweed here to make our seaweed fertilizer. So what we're going to do is we're going to head on home and we'll pick it up from there. Alright, I'm back and we're ready to get into making this seaweed fertilizer. But before I do, some of you might be new to gardening and wondering, hey, why do I need seaweed fertilizer anyway? Well, let me tell you, seaweed fertilizer is full of nitrogen, it's full of phosphates, but one of the most fantastic and amazing things about seaweed fertilizer is it also contains, I think it's roughly 70 to 100 micronutrients, which are really good for your plants. They stimulate the fungi growth in the soil, which is what helps with the transition of nutrients from soil to plant root. So it is a great thing to be putting on your plants every 2 to 4 weeks. So let's get into it. So one of the first things we want to do is actually rinse off all of the salt and the salt water from the seaweed, guys. Now the reason why we want to do this is our vegetables, our fruits, and even the beautiful flowers that we sometimes have in our garden do not like salt. It will damage their roots and cause them to die back. So giving them a good thorough rinse with some rainwater like I'm doing here, or even if you've only got tap water, is step number one in preparing your seaweed fertilizer. Now, once you've done that, guys, what we want to do is place the seaweed back into the bucket. This is where we are going to grow our seaweed fertilizer. Now, it's quite a simple process. It's really not complicated at all. Once we've got the seaweed back into the bucket, we're going to re-add that rainwater or re-add a little bit of tap water and almost fill the bucket right to the very top. We're going to place the lid on the bucket and put it somewhere cool and shaded. We do not want this out in direct sunlight, because believe me when I tell you, this is going to stink enough as it is. The last thing you want is more smell, because we've also sped up the decomposition process with the heat from the sun. Guys, now that we've got our seaweed in our bucket with our rainwater, what we want to do is let this bucket sit for roughly 2 to 10 weeks. The choice is actually up to you. But how we want to focus on diluting this is if we leave it for 2 weeks, we want 1 part seaweed fertilizer and we want 2 parts water. If we leave it for 5 weeks, we want 1 part seaweed solution and we want 5 parts water. And this is a rough estimate on how you can gauge just how much seaweed solution to put into the water. And guys, that is pretty much it. Making seaweed fertilizer is really, really easy, and it is as simple as going to the beach, following of course the local rules of your local government and council, collecting yourself some seaweed and placing it in a bucket of fresh water for a few weeks and letting that decompose. Guys, this is such a simple process, and I would encourage all of you to learn how to do it and to give it a go. Don't forget to hold your nose though when you open up that lid for the first time and start spreading it across your beautiful vegetable garden. Well, I hope you liked the video. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Smash that subscribe button if you want to have more helpful hints on how you can become more self-sufficient. Catch you on the next one.